Hello. How are you doing today? I hope everyone's excited for lunch, but just give me 15 minutes and let's talk about something about Brazil. My name is Andrew Fishman. I'm managing editor of the Intercept Brazil. We are a small independent media organization that focuses on investigative journalism, so I'm happy to tell you all about it. But first I want to say thank you to Media Party for having me here. This is my second year of being here. Very happy to be back. I'm here to learn more about Argentina and the media culture here, but for right now, let's talk about the Intercept Brazil, which is why they invited me. We started in 2016, in August 2016. We're a very young, very small newsroom. We focus mostly on government corruption, on corporate abuses, on human rights violations, on gender violence, on inequality in Brazilian society. And we are the Brazilian offshoot of the Intercept, which is an independent news organization that's based in New York. It was founded in 2013 on working with the Snowden revelations that were provided by the NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden. So we started with big investigative scoops and complex, high-risk stories kind of built into the DNA of how our newsroom was founded. And both newsrooms in the US and in Brazil, we have common focus, which is investigative journalism first and foremost, with always on a focus on truth to power, being extremely aggressive in the way that we approach our stories and that we approach our issues, and making sure that our journalists always have absolute editorial independence, which means that we're very fortunate that we're part of a nonprofit organization, philanthropic base. We have a large membership base too. So we don't have advertisers that we need to worry about offending. We don't have to worry about making, big profits for our millionaire, billionaire owners, because we don't have owners. It's a philanthropic trust. So that allows us to do the stories that our reporters want to do, with the voice that they want and the way that they want. And we lean into the stories. Last year when I was here, I mentioned that when we hire our staff, every single time we tell them that we want them to get us sued, but we want to make sure that we win those lawsuits. I'm very happy to report that we got sued a lot in the last year. We got, I think, 8 lawsuits. We haven't lost any of them yet. But maybe 5 months ago, we came into a new story which is like next level, way above lawsuits in terms of issues that we're facing. And that's a series that we call Vaza Jato. Vaza Jato is a massive trove of private chats and documents that come from the team of Operação Lava Jato, or Operation Car Wash, which is an anti-corruption task force in the public ministry based in Curitiba in Brazil. And they are more than just that. They've become the most important political force in Brazil in the last 5 years. They started with a small money laundering operation, and it became this massive investigation into Petrobras kickback schemes, which involved major politicians from every major party. And in 2016, as a result of Operation Car Wash's investigations, a reaction to that was the impeachment of Dilma Rousseff, which, ironically, this was recorded in a secretly recorded chat that the Lava Jato task force had between 2 major politicians. Dilma was refusing to step on the investigation, and so they decided that they needed to, in their words, quote, stop the bleeding. And so they pushed to kick Dilma out of office so that they could try to suppress Lava Jato. It didn't work. And then later on, last year with the presidential election, the Lava Jato task force was responsible for indicting, prosecuting, and then eventually convicting and putting in jail ex-president Lula da Silva, who was the leading presidential candidate in the election by far. So with him in jail, he wasn't able to run, and instead the number 2 candidate swooped in and won the election, which you all know is Jair Bolsonaro, the far-right extremist, who this week has become very famous for being the guy who's responsible for destroying the Amazon. Before that, he was responsible for his homophobic, misogynist, sexist, anti-environmental screeds And now he's the president of the country, and that's in large part due to a reaction to a result of the Lava-Jato task force operations. And they've always said along the entire time that they've been impartial state actors that are working to just fight corruption, and that's it. They have no skin in the game. They're not interested in protecting one part or the other. That became much more difficult for them to say when the lead judge in the case, Judge Sergio Moro, accepted a position as Bolsonaro's justice minister, showing that he's the man that put the number one candidate in jail, and then he became the justice minister for the number two candidate who came in, which kind of helped make it a little more difficult for them to maintain that line. But that became much more difficult in June 9th when we began our series of publications. And since then, we've published over 50 articles in the Intercept and with our partners. And the major revelations, there have been many, 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 but the major ones that have gotten attention are, one, the collusion between the judge and the prosecutors. The basis of any justice system in any democracy, that you have the defense, you have the prosecution, and you have an impartial judge that views the case and rules on it based on the law, and that's it. Our revelations showed in the first articles we did the chats between Moro and Deltan Dallagnol, which is the chief prosecutor, showing that Moro was telling them, giving them investigative tips, telling them which prosecutor should and shouldn't be on the prosecution because someone wasn't very good, telling them how to do their media strategy, asking them to actually attack Lula's defense. And it became very clear that instead of being an impartial judge who was separate from the case, he was the de facto leader of the operation. We also showed that despite their constant protestations that they're completely impartial and just doing their job as public servants, in fact, they were very interested in the political motivations of their case, and they were very aware of it. There's chats between the prosecutors expressing how very concerned they were that Lula could become the next president of Brazil, that he could, if he became president of the United States, that'd be interesting, the next president of Brazil, that maybe they're trying to make sure that he couldn't do interviews so that it wouldn't benefit his party. And they also decided that while they pushed very fast to get Lula imprisoned, to get him out of the election, they decided not to go after other politicians that they viewed, in their own words, as important allies. One example of that is the former president, Fernando Henrique Cardoso, who they had 7 pieces of evidence of potential corruption that he had committed. In Brazil, as a prosecutor, you're required to go after every piece of evidence that you have. You can't do selective prosecution as you can in the United States, for example. And even when they added 7 pieces of evidence that they could have gone after to investigate, they chose the weakest one, the one that was already past the statute of limitations, and they knew that, and they put it forward into the court. And when they did that, Moro came back to Dallagnol in the chats and told them that they shouldn't do that because he's an important ally. So it's clear that they were choosing to go after certain politicians and not other ones. Another case was Eduardo Cunha, who was the Speaker of the House. When they raided his house, Moro told them not to confiscate his cell phone because they were worried that it could have evidence that would kick it up to a higher court and then it would come out of his hands. So he told them not to get an important piece of evidence in the case. And that's part of the selective prosecution, the selective enforcement they had. One of the more interesting ones, 4 or 5 articles that we did, showed the personal enrichment that they, despite them saying that everything they were doing was in public interest and that Deltan Dallagnol repeatedly said that he was giving all of his speaking fees to charities. Then he changed his strategy, but he never admitted until we had the chats and the actual contracts in hand, showing that he was receiving large amounts of money to speak to banks, to speak to industry groups, to speak to trade organizations, and also sometimes doing that in private, unannounced, and under secrecy, including one speaking event that he made 30,000 reais, which is like $7,500, to speak to a firm that was under investigation at the time by Operation Lava Jato. So there's a clear conflict of interest in most countries. That sort of thing is completely prohibited. But in Brazil, that was allowed, and he wasn't even required to turn over the information of who he was speaking to or how much he was making. And just last week, he finally admitted publicly to us that he had made $100,000 about in personal profit, but it's actually more than that because of the way he did his calculation. And lastly, there's another two stories we did that we showed that there was one Supreme Court justice that was pushing hard against the abuses and the overreach that were evident in the way that Operation Lava Jato was working. And so they decided to use a circuitous way to try to investigate him to see if they could get him on corruption charges to get him out of their way. Something that's completely illegal and not allowed, but they were doing it in private. And we did a story about a month ago showing that they leaked sensitive private testimony that hadn't been public. They gave the video to the deposed Attorney General of Venezuela, which she then released the day before a major nationwide gubernatorial election. She released information showing that Maduro's allies had received illegal campaign contributions from Odebrecht, but she'd failed to do the rest of that paragraph where he also said that the opposition was also receiving that information. It was showing that they were basically creating their own foreign policy without involving the foreign ministry or the government. Just, this is a very small task force in a secondary city in Brazil, and they just had become this giant political monster. And these are things that people suspected for a very long time, but we were only able to prove once we were able to publish these stories. We did this with the help of many partners. We have more partners in this than that we're still in the works with, that we'll be publishing soon. But we made a political strategy. We're an openly and proudly, progressive organization. Our focus is on being factual and being fair, not necessarily being completely neutral, because we don't believe that's actually possible. And so we decided that to make sure that, to show the power of the reporting that we had, we wanted to partner with people from all over the spectrum. So we partnered with Veja, for example, which is the biggest magazine in Brazil, and they're very well known for being right-wing. They were very strong supporters of Lava Jato, and after reviewing our archive and working with us and publishing some major features, they decided to write an op-ed apologizing for the way that they had uncritically reported on Lava Jato over the last 5 years. We also worked with Folha, which is one of the biggest newspapers in the country. El País, UOL is one of the biggest outlets. And Reinaldo Azevedo from Band News, who's a famous right-wing contributor, and BuzzFeed. Of course, when you're doing very revealing reporting on the most powerful political actor in the country, one who has direct ties to the new president and the new government, there's going to be some pushback. And from the very first day when we published, Moro and the Lava Jato task force accused us of being criminals. They accused us of personally committing hacking. They accused us of, and then their allies accused us of having paid for the hacker, of being associated with the opposition party, with the PT, of being connected to Islamic terrorists. That was published in the magazine, that we were connected to Vladimir Putin, but also with Telegram, even though they're not actually allies, they hate each other. We were accused of a lot of things. And at one point even, Jair Bolsonaro said that maybe our colleague Glenn Greenwald should spend some time in jail for the work they were doing, but he didn't specify what exactly was the crime. Thankfully, we've also had a lot of positive support as a response to this as well. After Bolsonaro's comments, we had a statement of support from 29 civil society organizations, from news organizations, freedom of the press organizations, NGOs, and they stood with us and supported our reporting and the freedom of the press in Brazil, which was clearly being threatened. We were being pressured. We were also suffering digital attacks on our website, trying to overload our servers. Our secure drop server was being spammed, and a whole network of bots. And when they worked up the fervor against our reporting, trying to discredit us, to try to divert the focus of the story from what were actually the content of our reporting, they were able to organize an event around the country in support of Lava Jato, in support of Sergio Moro. This is a banner from Copacabana in Rio where it says, "Greenwald and Intercept, seed of evil, the next target." And there was a lot of people, but notably the protests were much smaller than they were last time. The last time they had a protest in favor of Lava Jato. And then in the corner there's a tweet from Carlos Bolsonaro, the son of the president. He's well known for his dark arts and social media, and he's asking, is there going to be more mysterious peacock, pavão misterioso? Because this is an anonymous Twitter account that was created by somebody that was creating fabricated chats between members of our staff and politicians, saying that we had bought we had paid for the hack, or we had fabricated the hacks, we had fabricated the tweets. And curiously, I think it was a day or 2 days after he posted that tweet, there was a new round of publications from Pavão Misterioso. Maybe it was just a coincidence. But in this analysis by Fabio Mellini, you can see that the way that the Show the Pavão hashtag spread came from one core nucleus, and at the center of it was pro-Bolsonaro Twitter accounts and online personalities, which, according to his analysis, means that this is a coordinated bot network that was spreading these defamatory chats, fabricated chats about us. But on the other side, we've also had incredible support. This is an event at the Brazilian Press Institute where there was a line out the door where there's I think over 1,000 people that weren't able to get into the auditorium. The people came out to show support for us. Next week, or a week from Monday, there's going to be another event in São Paulo with lots of celebrities, and it's been really amazing to see the amount of support that people come out to really embrace the reporting that we're doing. And the strongest show of that is in our crowdfunding. When we launched our crowdfunding in December to try to become more sustainable and to grow our newsroom, we were hoping to get 20,000 reais a month. And the platform that we did it with, Catarse, said that that's probably not possible. They actually bet us that it wasn't possible, and they gave us they would give us a reduction in their fee if we were able to hit that in a month and a half. So we hit that, but then after the revelation started publishing, we went way up, and now instead of 20,000, we have 324,000 reais a month, which before the exchange rate dropped last week, that was annualized over $1 million, which is incredible, and has allowed us to, pay for more physical security for our staff, but also to expand our staff. Right now, we're hiring 10 people to help expand our reporting on this project and on future projects. Other than that, our membership, that's our membership, which has grown 479%. Our Instagram is up over 300, Twitter 100. We've had huge growth in all of our platforms as a result of this, and our traffic as well. It's just been amazing to see how engaged and how the whole society, whether they agree with it or not, have been paying attention to this reporting and recognize the importance of it. And I wanted to show this picture of our staff because this is it. We have a 14-person staff. This includes 2 administrative assistants and 1 intern. That's all there is to it. I mean, and the point of that is to do journalism that has an impact, which is what we set out to do from the very beginning. You don't need to have a huge team. You don't need to have the most experienced team or the most resources. Resources certainly help. I think the average age of our staff is like 14 years old. We're very young. But all you need to have is you need to have a public reputation that you're committed, that if a source is going to take very serious risks to their personal safety or maybe to their lives to provide you with information, they need to know that you're not going to flinch, that you're going to do justice to the information, and that you're going to report it in the most aggressive and fearless way possible. And then here's some of our regular contributors that are not full-time, the rest of our team. And I mean, that's it. We still have a lot more to go. We still have a lot more reporting to do, and we're hoping that next year someone from our team will come back here and we'll have another big scoop that we'll be reporting on, and we'll have new innovations. But later today at 3 o'clock, I'm going to be doing a workshop. We're going to talk much more in depth about the process of doing Vaza Jato. I mean, we'll leave it open to lots of questions, but we're going to talk about the OPSEC that's involved, the editorial concerns, the communication concerns, the physical security, and all of the different hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of decisions that you have to make in this sort of high-stress environment, so that to make sure that you are not risking the lives of your staff and you're also doing the best work possible. Thank you.